Imagine to be in Saigon, April 30th, 1975. You've got 72 hours to make a decision that will define the rest of your life. Stay and accept the new regime, or take your chances on open water, where escape can quickly turn into drowning. Across the hall, your neighbor, a doctor who spent 20 years keeping people alive, is doing something that looks almost ridiculous until you understand what's happening. He's not packing cash. He's not waiting on bank transfers. He's wrapping ultra-thin sheets of gold in cloth, Kim, then gold leaf. He's compressing the value of an entire lifetime into something no bigger than a deck of cards, because the math is cruel and urgent. A legitimate ferry to Malaysia might cost $10 a head, but the moment borders tighten, paperwork gets weaponized, and the legal route disappears. You're dealing with smugglers, and the smuggler's price isn't $10. It's $1,000 per person for a dinghy crossing. Open sea. Family of 4, you need $4,000 in a form the smuggler will accept in 48 hours. And this is the part people miss. The doctor with the gold leaf is boarding the boat. The family with savings sitting in a Saigon bank account is still waiting. Waiting for a teller, waiting for permission, waiting for a system that is already collapsing. Between 1 and 2 million Vietnamese fled across the South China Sea using variations of this exact protocol. This isn't a story people tell for drama. It's a documented survival method from one of the largest refugee crises of the 20th century. So let me say the quiet part out loud about precious metals. Gold isn't for buying bread during collapse. It's not for trading cigarettes at checkpoints. It's not your everyday barter coin when the lights go out. Gold is for a very specific moment. When borders close, when institutions fail, when your life savings become a number you can't access, and you need to move your family across an international boundary with your accumulated wealth intact. That's the real purpose. The autopsy is always the same, and the survivors keep showing up with the same insurance policy. The Vietnamese boat people built one of the most refined escape systems in modern history, and it's centered on Kim Than, thin sheets of high-purity gold stacked, wrapped, and flattened to minimize bulk and visibility. Here's why it's genius. A 1-ounce bar is about 31 grams, worth roughly $4,300 at current prices. It's obvious. It's recognizable. It screams, confiscate me to any border guard who actually looks. Gold leaf is different. It can be layered so thin, bundled so tightly, disguised so naturally, that in a fast search it can look like foil, something worthless. And that difference matters, because a recognizable bar triggers instant attention. A stack of thin sheets might pass the first glance, especially in a rushed inspection. But here's the key insight that flips the entire gold debate. These families weren't stacking gold to spend inside the crisis. They were stacking gold to cross through the crisis and rebuild after it. Now jump to another scene. Vienna, 1938, the Anschluss. The city changes overnight. Laws change. Power changes. Suddenly, the institutions that validated your wealth can also become tools to target you. You're holding a certificate of deposit worth 50,000 Reichsmarks. Your colleague has 3 diamonds sewn into his coat lining. Guess which one makes it to Switzerland? One of the clearest, most documented examples of this principle is Oskar Schindler, bribing Nazi officials with black market goods and hard valuables to secure the release of workers. Those bribes worked for one reason. Officials could convert the value, store it, or trade it. You can't bribe a border guard with a bank document if the system behind that document is now hostile, or if that document identifies you as a target. Same pattern, same stages, same outcome. Paper assets that rely on institutional recognition can evaporate the moment institutions turn against you. But tangible assets, assets that don't require permission, paperwork, or a third-party ledger, retain value because their physical reality is the proof. Now, let's examine what safe passage costs in modern conflict zones, because this isn't history, it's recurring. Syria, 2015 to 2016, about 1 million Syrians reached Greece in roughly 18 months. Smuggler pricing was strikingly consistent, around 1,000 euros per person for a seat in a dinghy from Turkey to Greece. Meanwhile, a legal ferry ticket might be 10 euros. That's a 10,000% markup, the price you pay when a legal journey becomes an illegal one controlled by criminal networks. Family of 4, you need 4,000 euros, and it's not denominated in Syrian currency. It's denominated in euros or US dollars, because in collapse, the local money becomes a joke, and the real economy switches to currencies and assets that hold trust internationally. Now Ukraine, February 24th, 2022, tanks cross at dawn. People flee immediately. In the first 48 hours, the exits clog. Banks restrict transfers. ATM's empty. You might have $20,000 in your account. But on the ground, you have nothing. Yes, there's the famous case of a Ukrainian refugee escaping with Bitcoin on a USB drive and a seed phrase. He sold a portion privately to people he trusted to get enough cash to survive. But here's the problem with digital assets in the real world. They require infrastructure: internet, electricity, devices, access to exchanges, security competence, a chain of assumptions that breaks the moment you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Gold requires none of that. A person with gold can cross into a rich country with sophisticated banking, or a poor country with informal markets, because gold is universally understood. It's recognized across cultures, regimes, languages, and levels of development. And notice the detail people ignore in the Bitcoin anecdote. The refugee didn't live in Poland as a Bitcoin holder. He converted quickly to fiat because daily life still runs on spendable mediums: rent, food, transport, paperwork. Even in a scenario where crypto works, it often functions as a bridge toward hard currency, not a stable endpoint. Venezuela gives us a clean control case. As the bolivar collapsed, multiple digits of devaluation, inflation spiraling, anyone holding savings in local currency watched decades of work get erased. People who held gold, on the other hand, saw their nominal bolivar value rise dramatically and could convert through informal channels into dollars at rates closer to global reality. Now let's talk about what happens when you actually reach a safe country, because this is where most exit plans fail in practice. Under the Bank Secrecy Act, anyone entering or leaving the United States with more than $10,000 in currency must file FinCEN Form 105. Here's where people think they've found a loophole. Physical gold bars aren't treated exactly the same way as currency under that specific definition. But then comes the trap. Even if it's not currency, it's still subject to customs declaration rules, and failure to declare accurately can lead to seizure. And once an asset is seized, the process becomes brutal. Notices, deadlines, paperwork, legal burden. Exactly the kind of administrative maze that crushes people who just escaped a war zone with no stable address and no documents. This is where theory meets ground truth. And it also brings us to something most people never think about: denominations. Because if you're trying to pay for passage costing $300 to $500, offering a 1-ounce bar worth over $4,000 creates a problem. It's overpayment. It invites negotiation. It invites attention. And you can't make change at a checkpoint. That's why the optimal format in these scenarios isn't the big bar. It's fractional gold, especially 1 gram, 5 grams, 10 grams pieces. A 1 gram bar at current pricing sits around the low hundreds. Small, tradable, recognizable. You can deploy it strategically without sacrificing your entire stack in one exchange. It also reduces catastrophic loss. If one piece is discovered, you lose a slice, not your entire lifeboat. Granularity matters. Redundancy matters. And when authority collapses, the data is screaming the same lesson. Hard assets work best when they're portable, divisible, and universally recognized. Gold is value that doesn't need a story. No explanation, no paperwork, no permission. When a border guard sees a gold coin in someone's hand, the guard understands immediately. This is real wealth. No bank, no app, no government stamp required. And that matters because the exact moment you need an exit plan is the moment institutions stop validating paper claims. In state collapse, the authority that makes money starts evaporating. A guard serving a regime that's losing a war won't accept that regime's currency because the guard knows the regime and its money could be worthless within days. That's why gold works across chaos. It isn't loyal to any flag. It survives the flag changing. Think about the final stage of World War II. A Nazi official might turn away a suitcase of Reichsmarks without hesitation. But gold? Gold is different. Gold still buys the future after the regime falls. That's precisely why it functions as a bribe. It carries value through regime change, through surrender, through borders reopening under a new authority. Gold can be turned into cash in virtually any country, at almost any time, at a price anchored to global markets. When you offer a guard a gold bar, the guard knows they can walk into a dealer, a buyer, or a financial institution and convert it quickly. No waiting for a bank to reopen. No system is down. No risk of the currency being redenominated overnight. The guard isn't accepting your gold to hold gold. The guard is accepting your gold because it's immediately convertible into a life raft. Now, getting out is only half the problem. Keeping what you got out with is the second half. Once you reach a safe country, if you want to keep your accumulated gold without losing it to seizure, documentation becomes a real-world battleground. Here's the ugly principle. Declaring assets at the border creates friction, questions, delays, secondary screening, but failing to declare creates near-certain confiscation once discovered. That's the trap. People try to be discreet. They think partial concealment buys safety, and instead, it destroys the one thing you can't afford to lose at a border: credibility. The moment customs believes you're hiding something, you stop being a traveler with savings and become a suspected smuggler. And from there, the system doesn't need to prove much. You'll be fighting uphill immediately. The strongest legal posture is boring and procedural. Declare what you have and support it with whatever proof you can. Receipts, invoices, proof of purchase, certificates of authenticity, assay documents, anything that anchors your story in evidence. And yes, if you accumulated metals over decades, perfect documentation might be unrealistic, but even incomplete documentation helps. It shows good faith. It gives you leverage. It makes it harder to frame the gold as connected to wrongdoing. And here's the part most people don't consider. If officials discover concealment, your credibility collapses instantly. In many cases, it's safer to declare everything on entry and absorb the delays than gamble on partial concealment that's likely to be discovered. Because once discovered, you're not negotiating. You're reacting to a process that was designed to take assets first and let you argue later. There's an even more strategic approach if your situation allows it. Don't try to bring the full stack on day one. Enter safely first. Establish residency, create stability, get counsel, then import metals through compliant channels once you can navigate the system with legal support. And that reduces the chance your entire accumulated wealth gets trapped at the initial crossing. So what do you do in practice? 5 elements. 1. Start building fractional gold now, not 1-ounce bars. Think 1 gram, 5 grams, 10-gram denominations. Buy gradually over time, not in one panicked purchase. 2. Distribute it across your body and belongings during transport. Money belt, pockets, clothing linings. If one cache is found, you don't lose everything. 3. Assume friction losses. In real exits, some percentage gets burned. Bribes, seizures, theft. Plan for 10 to 30% loss and accumulate more than your perfect scenario number. 4. Declare holdings at the destination border and carry any documentation you have. If the amount is meaningful, engage legal counsel immediately. 5. Understand what this is. Insurance for the worst case. Not for buying bread during collapse, but for crossing borders when institutions fail and preserving life savings through regime change. Because the real question isn't whether you'll be affected. It's whether you'll see it early or whether you'll be standing at a closed border wondering why your bank account still shows $20,000 on a screen, but the ATM is empty, while the person next to you with a deck of cards package of gold leaf is boarding the boat to safety. Pattern recognition isn't pessimism, it's preparation. And the precedent isn't vague. It's decisive. 1.5 million Vietnamese, millions of Jewish refugees, 1 million Syrians, 5.8 million Ukrainians. Same protocol, same asset class, same outcome. Not if you'll need it. When? Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being here. If you liked the video, please subscribe for more. Feel free to leave a comment with your questions or ideas.